rabbit hole that is reality. It's about casting light on a whole spectrum of topics. Our interests cover and touch many bases. We snapshot the stories that have caught our eye in the news, information that raises eyebrows and questions, reading stories between the lines, covering how they may affect us. Looking at science, technology, discoveries, and the environment, as well as history, mystery, strange tales, and the fortean, all rounded up into a convenient package and delivered straight to your mind. So whether you're here, listening in search of knowledge or dipping in for entertainment, we're people just like you, passing our social commentary on what inspires and affects us. Welcome to Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, episode 13, in association with the UK Collapse Radio Network. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with us today. I shall be your host, Kristian Lander, and at www.rabbitholethatisreality.co.uk is the place to point your browser, where every episode is available to play, stream, listen, watch, and download, coupled with a summary of links and pictures. We are also available on YouTube and iTunes, so please subscribe. Let's kick off straight away with the countdown of what we've got coming up in today's episode. With the cold weather setting in, thermoelectric bracelets may heat you up. Another vision for the future of the internet that aims to sever all links with servers. And press freedom. Should the press really be controlled by the government? There's only one official story and everyone sticks to it, despite there may be evidence to the contrary. So a partnership between Facebook and the police could make planning protests and get-togethers impossible. And choose your friends wisely, because companies are choosing social media accounts before lending you money and also choosing whether to employ you or not. The rather disturbing story, in fact, of a young puppy who was euthanized for apparently being possessed by demons. Our special feature today is going to be on artificial intelligence. From Robbie the Robot to the Terminator, we have a view based on pop culture of how artificial intelligence, which once accomplished, how it will see its creators perhaps. How far are we away from such a precipice? We explore in conversation humanity's obsession and fascination with automation, from ancient history to mythology and today. That interview recorded this week with Ni Clayton. We will also be looking at the strange phenomena and road-travelling folklore of Phantom Hitchhikers, not to mention our look at the fortean archives. All this and more coming up today, a Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, episode 13. Well, this week I'm going to start off by saying a big thanks to Dave Skinner for managing, by way of lending me a piece of equipment so I could save a number of files, including recordings, documents, webcasts, books, documents and journals from a strangely failed laptop. Now, the laptop, I think it overheated for whatever reason. The hard drive was still good. It's been sat in my bedroom for like 6 months, unable to be turned on or whatever. I think it was in some kind of strange sleep mode. I couldn't seem to kick it out of it. And then by some random choice the other day, I just went, press the power button. And it was like, powered up. I was like, what is this? So I managed to see all my files. I posted about it on Facebook, whatever, how happy I was. And I thought, okay, I'll update it, and then I'll just, obviously it went to go do its restart, and then didn't turn back on. Has not turned on ever since. I've done the usual, battery discharge and stuff, and it's just not working. So Dave lent me a adapter so I can get into my hard drive and access it and save all my stuff to my main PC. And actually, I was really surprised the amount of stuff that I'd collected over the years, and it took me about 2 or 3 days just to go through what I had. And there was documents and journals going back to like mid-90s that I'd wrote, and passages and pieces, and all my documents for them. I used to produce a magazine. I guess I still do produce it, I just haven't wrote one up recently, called Beyond the Line, and I found all my original archive material, when it came to producing them, and that kind of covered pretty much what Rabbit Hole That Is Reality is, but in a magazine format. If you want fancy, go and have a look. If you go over to my other website, which is paranormalnetwork.co.uk, you'll find there's a number of links on there to the magazine articles, and where you can download it as a PDF and you can flick through it and stuff. And that's a really good. Of course, I'm going to say it's really good. Pat my own back here, but yeah, go and have a look. And who knows, if you like the kind of quality, the kind of strange stuff we talk about, it's certainly worth having a read. And to find all that stuff again was pretty good. And so thanks to Dave Skinner for that one. But what I did find, it made me think. About something I kind of talk about on a semi-regular basis. I actually save a lot of stuff. I save a lot of sources, I save a lot of articles, materials when online. Because I'm very much aware that documents don't last forever, particularly websites, When you consider how much content there is, and how much content perhaps you've published or you've wrote, and is in the web, is in the net, should the net ever go down for any reason? Should there be a power shortage, everything from a solar flare to the internet kill switch? I mean, they're extreme examples, but they're not unlikely. I mean, think about what you'll lose. All that time, effort put into them, and how much you would commit to technology. Think of the knowledge throughout history. Think of like the Great Library of Alexandria, all that knowledge that was destroyed for war control, whatever. I mean, to save it, if you've got something of importance that you've come across, it's worth just copying down the text and putting it in a text file backing it up, or save the website itself as HTML, and back up everything. Because when we start talking about subjects that are controversial, and those things that people don't really want to discuss, back it up, because before you know it, it's gone. Think of all the books, think of all those parchments in history that are gone. Now you think about how much we commit to the internet. If it's gone, it'll be gone forever. Keep that in mind. Perhaps the best place really to start today is not by going down the list. Let's keep it organic, let's keep it flowing. I had a mailbag. I had an email over Facebook from someone I didn't know. Feedback is generally from people I already know. But this was a mail that's been sent to me from someone I didn't know. And it says, your show has just the right balance between what is happening and what we should be looking at. Not to mention the Atlas stuff, which is real. I love it. I love the show. Keep it up. It kind of gives you that feeling of like, yeah, that's good. So Mark, if you're out there, thank you very much for that. It's about making the conscious effort to not just talk about a headline, not just talk about a news piece or a story, but actually add some context to it, add some opinion, add a view to it, and explore upon that. And all the different views, even if we don't agree with those other views, let's have a look at them, because they are valid, and other people will have them. They're taking the time and the effort to produce research and something original material. With Christmas and the Yule period fast approaching, we have this forever pressured need. It's not a need, it's a created artificial construct need to be part, with every pound that we've earned, to buy, sales, everyone, great deals, buy everything, making everything possible to make us, the consumers, spend. Now, there was a report out this week from the government's own monetary advice service, and it was talking about some stats and stuff. Let's just have a quick nosy at these stats. Now, it says the average spend for the Christmas period this year will be £487, which is down £21 on last year's figures, and they also reveal that 9% of people are actually still paying for last Christmas. Also, according to these figures from the Monetary Advice Service, 1 in 40 adults is now living on payday loans, and they have extortionate interest rates, and people are pawning their goods to buy back later on. A third of their customers says they'll be bumping their purchases up this year with credit card debts to pay for the pressure of Christmas. So, my advice really is don't buy into the hype. Buy just what you need. Think about it, right? All you're really going to have to really purchase, if you want to buy gifts, that's fine, fair enough. But a lot of people, the value has been lost in the gifts that we produce. The idea that if you make something or you create something, whether it's poetry, art, it's original writing material, and you create something that has some value. You don't just go into a shop and buy something off a shelf. That's fair enough, someone has produced that, but they're usually produced en masse. So this year, perhaps, make an effort to produce something original and give it to someone meaningful with meaning. Although perhaps one of the things we could buy, although unfortunately it won't be on sale this year, unfortunately, a group of MIT students, engineering students in the US, have created a thermoelectric bracelet designed to keep the wearer at an optimum thermal level heating for personal comfort. They've called it Wristify, and the prototype, it measures air and skin temperature, and then it sends thermal pulses into your wrist to cool or warm you depending on your individual needs. And the idea is, in principle, it could save energy instead of heating a whole building or an entire office or your student faculty or whatever. You are just warming yourself up. I think that sounds pretty good, actually. The creators here on the MIT news site say they can change the body temperature by 0.4 degrees per second. And again, the intent really is to control the temperature of the person rather than an entire building. They've won £10,000 from MIT's MadMech contest, which the inventors, will use to improve the prototype and the algorithms required to automate the process, and obviously to develop a battery system. I mean, the applications just rush to mind. Think of like mountaineers, who of course are going to be after trekking on mountains, to regulate the body temperature. Even perhaps, I wonder how it will work for divers. I don't know about that one. Underwater, water and technology don't tend to mix too well. But I mean, astronauts, of course, it's like 200 degrees minus out there in the vacuum of space. So this could be ideal, because I mean, every astronaut complains, despite being in a suit, how cold they are. But care for the elderly. Imagine to keep them warm instead of having to turn on like the gas or turn on the electricity for like 20 hours a day. Here, potentially, you can just give them personal risk. Would it be in self-monitoring? If, say, an older lady, for instance, is developing dementia, she doesn't forget to turn the gas on and off. She has something that's regulating her temperature herself. I think the applications for this could be phenomenal. Press freedom and the freedom of information and expression, and what we're talking about in the media, is something I feel really quite passionate about, because I think that there needs to be multiple views and multiple perspectives on what we're seeing happen in our society, our world, and the economy. And unfortunately, imagine if they all had exactly the same message. It's all rosy, it's all good. Just imagine, we're at war with East Asia today, whereas at Eurasia tomorrow. And of course, all the records are writ to reflect that. We're fastly going in that direction, at an alarming rate, in fact, with this new royal charter that's been proposed and put forward and wants to be brought into law quite quickly, mainly headed up by people who unfortunately have had embarrassing situations with the press, like Hugh Grant and so on. So this has really come on the back and pushed to the forefront of all the papers, really, and it's kind of come out of the Leveson inquiry regarding phone hacking scandal and so on. But the idea is that they want to have an independent, but run by the government, overseer of what gets posted in the press. So can you imagine, you won't actually get perhaps live news, you'd get news that has to go through a filter, whether it's okay to publish, whether it's okay to the status quo of what we're discussing about at the moment. And that makes some very uncomfortable reading, now for that you're going to have your news filtered to be the story that, whether it be the government or whether it be a corporation, wants to put across because they've sponsored the story, so to speak, or they've put their money into it. There is, however, so a lot of the papers haven't actually signed on to this, and they're steadfast as the ground, and I do not blame them. And talking on the BBC Andrew Mart's show today, that I caught this morning, there was what's her name, Maria Miller. I put it down as. She is the culture secretary, and she was discussing what the newspapers have put forth as their recommendation for how we should solve the future problems of potentially along the lines of the Leveson problem. And that is an independent press standards association, and the opportunity to work on its own, as the new regulator is created by groups including like Rupert Murdoch's News UK, a Daily Mail publisher, Associated Press, and the Telegraph Media Group. And there's like the publishers also of the Guardian, the Independent, Financial Times, as it were. Although they're opposed to a royal charter, have also not so far signed up for the independent press charter either. So, I mean, I guess their comments are going to disappoint groups campaigning for regulation of the press. But, after months and months of this going on, the system's voluntary. And the UK papers are resisting the idea of becoming regulated under a charter, whichever one it is. I don't know. I guess there needs to be some kind of would be an investigative process, set up so things like this do not happen. But when it comes to press regulation, it's unjust, it's unfair to know that all news would be filtered. All news would only be a secular view. I mean, that's not very liberal. That's not very freedom freedom of press, freedom of expression, freedom of journalism would be completely shut off, if that was to come into be. So I'm watching this with a lot of interest about how this plays out. I mean, the internet really is the vestige, the frontier, where people are still, at the present, to a large degree, can write what they kind of want, although even that right now is questionable to some degree. The internet needs to be a free platform, in the sense that we are free to write what we will, or what we wish, and to share news to people who have the same interest as us. And a future internet aiming to sever links with servers could be one of the ways to go. We spoke about MeshNet quite recently, and we spoke about a wireless network. This one is, they're calling it Pursuit. Researchers have taken the first step to a radical new architecture for the internet, and they claim it will transform the way information is shared online, making it faster and safer to use. The prototype is being funded by the EU, and it's called Pursuit, and it is being used as a proof of concept model for overhauling the existing structure of the internet's IP layer, which is your internet protocol. The Pursuit internet, according to the creators, would enable a socially minded intelligence system which users can use to obtain information without needing to go to a server. Now, if you don't really know how the internet works, basically, most of us do, a lot of us also aren't tech savvy. When it goes from when you connect to the internet from your PC or your phone, for instance, it goes to your internet service provider, your Virgin or B3 or whatever internet company you're with, and they will have a server. That server will then dial, say, Google, for instance. Say you wanted to go search on Google, so it goes from your phone to an internet provider to Google server, and then basically the search goes out from there, and then you get the information back. So it's kind of like jumping all the time. This would bypass that system completely. Servers not to be there. I guess if you wanted to go to Google to do your search, it would literally hop over your internet provider to there. It's kind of like a bit like the peer-to-peer system, the BitTorrent network. How if say for instance you had a document you wanted to share, as long as you have the file share and someone else can search for it, and then they can have it from your PC. So literally you have this internet-wide scale, almost like a file share system, that can make the internet much, much faster and certainly more efficient, and it would withstand the escalating levels of global demand and a global control. And I think also just on a pure tech level, it would make the system almost immune to server crashes. Server crashes do happen, and they'll screw you over. I've been certainly there. And obviously that system will be bypassed completely. So I think that could be really useful. That's been put forth by Dr. Dirk Tross, and he's the senior researcher at the University of Cambridge's Computer Lab, and he's the technical manager for Pursuit. What I actually might do, I might email him for some more details as well. So not only just looking at the story here, obviously in his official website on the University of Cambridge website, I'll see what we can actually find out about this and keep you in the loop, if you like. So how's your love of animals? Now, a study published this week by the World Wildlife Fund has found 441 new species of animals and plants that have been discovered in a short period of time in the Amazon, including a monkey that purrs like a cat. Now, found between 2010 and 2013, a species of flat-patterned lizard, a thumbnail-sized frog, a vegetarian piranha, a brightly coloured snake, and a pink orchid, according to WF's group of scientists. They've compiled a massive list of all the stuff in there. I'm not going to go through them individually, because I'll be here all day for that. 441 is a lot of stuff, but it kind of gives you that a reinvigoration of what else is out there. I mean, every single time they go down to the bottom of the ocean, for instance, they're always finding, a new fish or a new type of plankton or a new kind of new microbe down there. We're also finding this on land as well, like the Chiquita tinny monkey here, this new species. It's 20 species off the tinny monkey, and it lives in the Amazon basin. And the babies have a very unusual trait in the way that they communicate to each other is by purring. Purring monkeys, brilliant. And the thumbnail-sized frog, the amphibian, in fact, is believed to be so highly endangered, its Latin name, Alibates Billis, actually refers to mean that may be lost. This alludes to the fact that the area is now open to tourism, and a third of the species are found in this area, which unfortunately most of them ended up on dinner plates. Hey, but there's so much out there, people. Let's just keep the discoveries going, because this really is an amazing place in the universe to be. It's just most unfortunate in the Amazon. Had a story that broke last year. Actually, it almost made me well up just thinking about it. That all these indigenous tribes were forced to move on because they wanted to flood an area for hydroelectric dam for a city because they weren't having enough power. It's fair enough, but they actually flooded this entire plains area. And there's so much archaeological sites that got destroyed. All the native people sites got destroyed. Absolutely disgusting. And what's worse than that, I mean, an area the size of Wales, gets destroyed every day. And it's the world's carbon sink. So you have all this build of all this carbon, which, shouldn't ever get caught on fire. Okay, it is a rainforest, but, it's not immune to fire, it's wood. And how many species are in there? I mean, it was a documentary that was available free over this last month or so, at the end of October. It was called The Spirit of Science, or Sacred Science, I believe it was called. It was a number of people who went to the Amazon looking for traditional medicine. They'd all had a variety of different ailments and illnesses, and 9 people basically put like £5,000 in whatever and went to the Amazon to be treated by natural medicine. And the guy who was presenting it, the documentary filmmaker, he used a statistical example. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the film. It was only available online to watch for a limited period of time. But I believe his example was that there's over 25,000 medicinal products worldwide that are produced, pharmaceutically, and they come from the rainforests of the Amazon. However, less than 4% of the Amazon has ever even been checked for medicinal purposes. So there's much more out there. What's never been discovered, never been looked at. And that's why these people were spending time with local villagers and local elders in regards to treat their ailments. And a lot of them were healed. I mean, not all of them. Well, I think out of the 9, I think 5 people had healed, and 1 didn't come back. He decided to stay there. And the rest, the 4 people, didn't work out for them. And the whole documentary is actually the journey of all 9 who made that decision. Taking a slight step back there, shifting gears towards the humanities' symbiotic relationship with animals. This story just takes a demonic twist. It's not a joke. It's just a really twisted story, in fact. It starts off as a story about love and becomes something far darker. And I'll explain it to you. An animal lover in San Antonio, Texas is now seeking legal action after a 12-week puppy that she gave to a shelter was euthanized for having demons and being possessed. Her name was Elaine Buckhorn, and she was devastated after receiving the news that a 12-week-old Chihuahua Dachshund mix had been fostered. That she'd taken in. Her son had found it, basically, and she looked after it for a month, just trying to find a home, but she wasn't able to do so. So she took it to the Humane Society, hoping that, of course, more people going there, that the animal would have a chance to find a loving home. And she spoke to WOAI-TV that she learned from the shelter on October 14th, 3 days after taking the puppy there, the dog had been put down as it had been possessed by demons and was showing aggression towards employees. And they had posted that it was been sad, the puppy had been put down, it was filled with demons and showed aggression. What? Dog possessed? No. Our Buchan added to My San Antonio that on Facebook said the pup is now free from whatever unknown demons were causing the aggression. Now, Billy Zurcher, who is the executive director of the Humane Society, told WOAI-TV that the shelter's policy, that is, it cannot put dogs up for aggression who exhibit aggression. Completely understand that, I know that happens. But to actually state to the woman who took it in, it's got demons? What the fuck? What the fuck? I think here is a good time to pause for thought and to have a break. And we shall come back on the other side of the break. We shall be talking to Ni Clayton about artificial intelligence and humans' preoccupation with automation, as well as looking at the phenomena and the road-travelling folklore that is Phantom Hitchhikers. It always gets weirder on the other side of the break, not to mention we're going to be looking at the fortean archives as well to find some quirky, funny stories that I'm sure you guys are going to love. So we'll see you on the other side. You're a survivor. You're safe. The door is closed and the zombies are on the other side. You can now look in the item box and pull out your copy of Beyond the Line. Or alternatively, you could point your browser to paranormalnetwork.co.uk and download your issue today.
They are close. They are here. They come with a message. Seeking the truth.
You hold the answer deep within your own mind.
Death in its most hideous form.
Let us shine a light into the darkness. Step out of the shadow of fear and preconception into the illumination of reason.
The rabbit hole that is reality. Across the spectrum of topical talk, news that raises an eyebrow, science, technology, the environment, mysteries, strange tales, and the fortean that is both informative and entertaining. As you spread our wings and catch our stride, you can find us now on the web, rabbitholethatisreality.co.uk, where you can listen, download, and watch all the episodes produced so far. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/rabbitholethatisreality, or follow the presenters on Twitter at @DefineKristian and @SylviaDragoon for commentary, insight, and conversation. This is the rabbit hole that is reality. This is the Rabbit Hole That Is Reality radio podcast. Thank you for joining us here on this side of the break. I'm going to be talking to Ni Clayton, who I had a discussion with earlier this week on artificial intelligence. We're also going to be having a discussion regarding Phantom Hitchhikers with reason in mind, as well as delving into the fortean archives and what the stories that have caught our eye in the news that have certainly made us giggle. So, without further ado, this is the interview I recorded this week with Ni Clayton.
Well, I'm Ni, and I have a BSc in Artificial Intelligence. That's from the University of Derby. I got that in 2001. With Artificial Intelligence. Certainly around the turn of the century, it was looked on as something very reductive in that it would probably be a software problem that we could crack sooner or later. However, there's a different school of thought which says that understanding artificial intelligence, i.e. creating an artificial consciousness, will help us get a little bit closer to understanding our own consciousness.
I can understand that, yeah.
Now, in a sense, that's cart before the horse, because right now, and one of the major stumbling blocks that we had in those days, was that we simply still don't know how human consciousness works. So this was something that we looked at. We looked at theories that consciousness resided in the pineal gland. We looked at more modern theories that it may reside in, and this is my favourite phrase from the entire degree, cytoskeletal microtubules.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is basically the scaffolding that your nervous system runs on.
Okay, so could you tell us a bit more about that? I'm intrigued now.
So, the idea is that if we could figure out where the physical component of intelligence in human lies, we'd then be able to replicate it in machinery.
Okay.
Now, Cytoskeletal microtubules. You know how you have your main bony skeleton on which your musculatory system
Yes,
hangs,
yes.
and indeed all the other gubbins that, I'm quite attached to. Cytoskeletal microtubules are the teeny little tubes in which your nerves travel through. They're almost like a smaller secondary, not necessarily bone, but almost like the insulation that goes around the wiring that's your nervous system.
Okay.
Now, whether that's any more feasible than the whole traditionally mystic pineal gland is another matter entirely. But what it does mean is that we were looking at the mechanisms of intelligence. Now, bearing in mind I graduated in 2001, since then our whole understanding of neurology, of the interactions of the brain, have come on massively since then. Things like MRIs are so much more commonplace now than they were. And obviously with all these but all the more emphatic research into things like dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that, we now understand a lot more about how the brain works than we did, but we're still not quite at the point where we can definitively narrow down on a portion of the brain or the body and say, that's where it is, that's where consciousness lies. So the other theory that was going around was that intelligence might actually be an emergent property. Now, an emergent property is where if you have all the components separately, you'll have something that has the qualities that you're planning for. But it's only when you combine the various components that you'll actually see another unexpected quality, and that's your emergent property.
Okay, right. I get that.
So this was something that was taking up a surprisingly large amount of discussion when I was doing sort of the serious studies into artificial intelligence. I mean, when I say that everything's moved on a lot since 2001, I'm really not kidding. A lot of the learning algorithms, a lot of the language acquisition, because that's always been considered one of the big landmarks. Yes, one of the big landmarks of artificial intelligence is for a computer to be able to understand natural language processing. That's a biggie, because at that point, the need for separate software languages evaporates. Now, you can see that a lot in things like Siri, you can see that. Oddly enough, a lot of the stuff that we were doing with artificial intelligence, with language acquisition, learning algorithms, things like that, last Christmas's Furbies, you could see it all in them. The little repetition of the apps where the original Furby comes with its own language pre-programmed called Furbish, and then you use the little smartphone app that comes with it to teach you English or whatever language you're using. So if, say, the kid you've given it to is French or German or whatever, they can then teach the Furby their language. That whole business with the language acquisition things, they were all sort of theoretical constructs that we were dealing with in my degree. Now they're children's toys. I mean, there's been more sinister uses of the stuff that we were discussing as well.
I was going to come on to that a little bit later, actually.
Neural networks. Neural networks sound like they're really complicated, but actually we did them on any old uni computer in a bit of C++. Very badly in my case, but what they were used for mostly was we were creating neural nets that could then analyse images, compare images. It was mostly static images, but there was talk of moving on to sort of moving images and doing things like that. Well, now, of course, there's automatic algorithms for recognising faces on CCTV, for recognising the way somebody walks on CCTV, because there's lots of different ways for people to walk. It's not quite as unique as a fingerprint, but it's got to be said, things like calculating your height, calculating that, you favour your left leg a bit. A mask or balaclava isn't going to help you with that. And that's all coming off the neural net technology that we were playing with. We were essentially playing with it back in the first year of our degrees. Because neural nets obviously are trying to mimic the synaptic connections of the brain. So it's an offshoot, but it's not... Obviously, it's not used for pure science. So you've got this weird thing where what was meant to be sort of one of the big questions, what is intelligence? What is consciousness? Can we replicate it? Has become this weird mixture of sinister overviewing and kiddies' toys.
Yes, essentially it's become, how can we sell this now into a consumer product? Then consumer products are toys. I guess obviously the alternative, the sinister style, is the things of like automated CCTV. For instance, I know that if you go to a casino, for instance, they have a CCTV obviously monitors the people coming in, recognises a normal customer and a high roller customer. As long as we spend more money, they instantly want a VIP experience. They want a camera who can recognise that and flag a person up to go and see them and make sure they're given that as a minimum, because that's what they expect as a customer. Obviously, you as a business are expected to deliver to them. And we're now seeing that in supermarkets as well. You're now seeing cameras on the moment they are in the door. Essentially, they're tracking as you come in the store. They're tracking you when you're at the checkout. It's how long you're spending in the store. They're customising adverts in the store for you, whether it be what you wear, what you do. And when you link that database up with, say, what's on your smartphone, where you're tracking your location, the GPS and stuff, all that data, the big data, is working together in algorithms to essentially make up personal profiles of everyone.
Yep.
And everything you do, everything where you go, and that scares a lot of people.
It should. Apart from the obvious concerns of privacy, I think the problem is that, in a sense, we expect too much of our machinery still. I mean, it's a well-known fact that PCs, even today, still have the innate intelligence of, say, an earthworm or a particularly stupid ant, things like that. So it's very easy to palm off blame for mistakes or violations or anything like that, going, oh, well, that was the computer, that did that, buggered that up. But of course, without artificial intelligence, the ultimate accountability still has to be going on to the humans that use it.
That's right.
So part of the goal of artificial intelligence, it's naive to say it's a pure science thing, we're on this quest for an alternative consciousness. I'm sure there were people like that. I mean, I was at university. But the other thing that we're looking for, and the thing that's really probably going to make the big dollars in terms of research, is, oh look, here's another intelligence that can be accountable so that we're not. How do you sue a machine?
Oh, you don't, of course.
This is the thing, and this is, to a certain sort of mindset, what makes artificial intelligence so important.
Do you think really that there's the alternative goals in it? There's those who are looking for consciousness. There are those who are looking for, can we build Robbie the robot, or can we have essentially a camera that can have blame? Or obviously you look in Japan where they have the Toyota, it's like the championship, I think they call it now, where of course all these different competing companies like Toshiba, Toyota, Honda, they're all developing multi-billion-dollar robots that eventually will become labourers, and they'll become can it walk on stairs, those kind of things. And every year it does get really more amazing what they can do on their own.
It's true, although in that sense robotics isn't precisely artificial intelligence. The robots that are able to go up the stairs, yes, that's an amazing technical feat from a robotics point of view. However, we didn't really study robotics in any great depth, because that whole business with going up the stairs is basically an automatic function in a human brain. You don't think, and now I raise the left foot 6 inches and forward 4 inches, and now press it down. You go upstairs automatically without really thinking about it. So, although it's an amazing progression in robotics, it doesn't necessarily follow that it's an amazing progression in artificial intelligence. They're definitely related disciplines, but they are slightly distinct.
Yeah, I suppose that it's the whole goal is an automation rule, isn't it? Can a robot using its own intelligence or of software, can it recognise how to raise its leg, how far to put it, how much pressure to put it to lift the weight of its own body weight. It's actually it's a matter of calculation.
Yes.
And can it recognise the calculations needed to for a natural scenario, such as going up the stairs? You know, can you give it enough information to make its own judgment?
This is the question. If the robot was choosing whether to go up the stairs or not, say you put an incentive at the top or at the bottom of the stairs, then suddenly you're changing the game. But the robot goes up the stairs because it never occurs to the robot not to go up the stairs, because that's just what its instructions say to do.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting it. It doesn't have to go upstairs.
Yeah.
if it says no, that's...
Then suddenly, you're on for a whole other technological progression. But it never occurs to the robot not to go up the stairs, and thus it simply obeys the software it's got.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you spoke earlier about your goals at university. One was about the consciousness. What was that your only goal, or was there other goals that you had in mind? Why you wanted to take on the discipline?
I think to understand about consciousness is something that humanities has always been fascinated with. I did obviously a computing-based degree, but I did it from a point of view of A-levels that were English, religion, and theatre studies. So I came to it from a humanities background, which was a bit awkward when I first sort of sat in front of the foundation year of university. But it did mean that there were different ways of phrasing the questions. I'm not sure it's accurate to say that that was my only goal, but certainly that was the major goal of trying to understand consciousness from a different viewpoint.
Is that as a sense to perhaps understand yourself better? Is it a psychological thing in that regards as well?
There may have been an element of psychology in there, but I think it was not so much me as the person as us as the species.
So your goal has a lofty one for mankind?
Only insofar as I am a small squishy piece of mankind, and thus it would, affect me too.
So, I mean, you say there about the goals of mankind. Throughout history, you mentioned history there, there's been many examples, and we spoke about them before the conversation, where in history there has been characters who appear to have some kind of automation. That'd be the robot of Talos, the Golem. I think go back to the chap in China who developed the flying birds and the flying dragons. Yeah, there's many examples where 3rd century BC, Mo Toi, who was a Japanese engineer who came up with birds, flying dragons, and walking warriors. Clearly these are automated systems that were designed really to fascinate those to watch them. Although, of course, in Talos it was actually for a defence mechanism. But they're autonomous. They do their own. They are given a set. I'm not sure whether they're just following a set routine, but they appear to be reacting to real life scenario. In regards, say, to Talos, for instance, where you had Crete, where allegedly it used to run down 3 times a day. It worked a bit like a lighthouse, and any time there was any ship that was going to be invaded, it picked up huge boulders and threw them. What's more interesting than the fact that there's actually more shipwrecks around the Isle of Crete than anywhere else in the Mediterranean. So, was there really a robot of Talos?
As to that one, I think at that point we're talking about human archetypes. The automaton is as deeply ingrained in our sort of mythology, our folklore, our history, our things like that, as, say, the fairy godmother. Actually, in a sense, that's not a bad comparison, because don't forget, all through our mythology, our folklore and things, we have always ascribed non-human intelligences. Obviously in this country and sort of the more Celtic countries, we'd talk about sort of the elves, the fae, etc., etc. We've always had this sense, why should we be the only ones with this particular layer of consciousness? Now, obviously mythology changes over time, folklore changes over time, so come the 17th and 18th centuries, when we're starting to build these automata, you have Marie Antoinette was built a beautiful automata which actually resembled her and sort of played the dulcimer.
Yeah.
Various sort of different cans within it. were designed to calculate the angles and for the hammers it was holding to hit the strings. So we've now come to the stage where we're believing in non-human intelligence somewhere over there beyond the fields we know, to, well, now we're in a more mechanistic age. Can we make it? Can we make these non-human intelligences? And that's where you get the thing with, for example, the European legend of the golem, as you mentioned earlier. Now that's a very interesting one because it's purely a matter of a software problem. In fact, it's probably one of the earliest software problems that you find. It comes from a time that predates software, but because of the logical way it runs. Quick, precise. So a rabbi gets a load of clay and he creates a mechanical man, a golem. How he animates it is that there's a word across the forehead, which is the word for truth. So he sets it to do tasks, but at no point during the setting of the tasks does he say, and when you get to here, stop. So this golem has the order, go dig a ditch. It digs a ditch. But because there's no software command which says, and now end program, it keeps digging the ditch until eventually it has to be decommissioned by removing the first aleph of the word on its head, so that the word for truth becomes the word for dead. So they have to come up with an alternative off switch, purely because they didn't think their way through when they were programming the tasks of the golem. So although it's animated by, sort of magic and learning and things like that, it's still a matter of this corruption of language where we need to break things into very basic tasks. And that's an idea that still carries on. I mean, you can still see these sort of little software logic puzzles in things like the early works of Asimov. I, Robot is essentially lots of short stories with logic puzzles in. What happens if we change this law of robotics, or just leave this subclause out?
Yeah.
How does that then affect machine? So there's this whole idea of we are now building the non-human intelligences, but what are the implications of that? And that's something that we've been exploring in our fictions and things like that, literally for centuries. Even before we had any sort of technological feasibility, we were already asking these questions.
Well, it's a really good example where you began that conversation that we've always been surrounded in mythology and history with intelligences and consciousness that aren't human. Or you can put that, ascribe to spirits, to gods, to figures, to animated characters such as the golem and stuff. Is it because we've always imagined that consciousness is actually outside our body, and we want other things to interact with us at a level that we have? So in the same way that you and I are having a conversation, we also want to have this conversation with a spirit who might be sat in this room who's invisible over there, but we might be there. Even might be there. We want to have a conversation with them as well, but they represent some kind of other matter. They could represent the afterlife, or they could represent God and our aspiring aspects, and perhaps they live under the ground. We want to have a conversation on a level playing field, but with something that's completely alien to us.
Maybe humanity's just lonely.
We might be.
There's, we interact with other animals, particularly other mammals, all the time, whether they're pets or working animals or whatever. But however much we talk to them, who's talking back to us?
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, I was reading a study very recently, in fact. I think it's out of Miami, and they found out what effectively is the letter E in a local dolphin language. And I thought that's genius. You should get that, because that really is the basis of how we work out another culture's language.
Yes.
As we work out the vowels. And that was just like a breakthrough. We've actually, obviously, in a shoal of dolphins, they've actually worked out what the vowels are. And I thought, the basis of that is just incredible.
It is. I mean, language acquisition in dolphins is, and indeed whales to a lesser extent, is absolutely fascinating, because every time we think we've glimpsed the ceiling of what it is that dolphins, and indeed other primates, can do, we're surprised all over again. We really are. And I think, in a funny sort of way, that's probably what's going to solve a lot of the questions artificial intelligence poses. People who are looking at our fellow species and people who are doing dementia research, I'm not convinced that artificial intelligence is going to be, some lone software team in a lab somewhere. I think it's going to be somebody, or more accurately, a team of somebodies, who are looking at the questions of organic intelligence.
Yeah, organic intelligence is certainly intriguing, isn't it? Can you have a conversation with something that's not you? And there was a study recently about how to store memories and how to store information in biological matter. I know that's a really big thing. Is that can you have organic material that stores data? I mean, principally, there's a kind of gel there experimented with, a crystalline gel, that effectively can store information potentially for 1,000 years.
Yes. I mean, you saw, about 10 years ago, you saw people trying to mess around with bacteriological colonies as data storage, whereby the state of the bacteria was, you had two basic states of the bacteria, so you'd effectively made binary bacteria.
Yeah.
So there was an idea of organic computing in that sense, but it's a nice little gimmick, but it doesn't necessarily add to the conversation, as it were. It probably adds some interesting implications to data storage and computer processing, but from a pure AI perspective, it's more of an interesting tangent, really.
Yeah, I guess it would be. I was looking at different types of AI that we use today, but obviously I've been involved with Game City for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the first few years I was intimately involved with Game City. This year I had a bit more of an on-off talk to them kind of thing. And they were showing off a lot of would be a good example. They showed basically a 16-player version of Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and on this massive, like 60-foot screen, and loads of different versions, like Space Invaders. What Space Invaders was played by 20 people, and all the different ships at the bottom. But then you had literally thousands and thousands of things going back and forth at the top. Obviously, indie games that have been playing, the university guys. And I had me thinking about, say Pac-Man, for instance, as an early game, and say something like a game made today where, for instance, you're shooting other soldiers, or you have an assistant with you playing Warcraft or whatever. They are AI to an extent. They've been given programming language to react to you or the other characters. I mean, is that really AI, or is that just a reaction software?
It's cool. It's technically a reaction software, but that really sounds like I'm underselling it. It's incredibly complicated. It's getting to the stage now where we're probably going to end up needing new markers for AI. Back when I was studying it, there was still the Turing test, which was you sat a human down in front of two screens. Behind one screen was another person, behind the other screen was a machine. The human had a conversation with both screens, and if at the end of the conversation the human couldn't specifically say, well, that one's the person and that one's the machine, then that machine would have been deemed to have passed the Turing test. Now, that's all very well, but we quickly discovered, as we refined reaction things, and I mean things like ELIZA, that was a very popular piece of software that was floating around sort of 2000. We quickly discovered that it's a nice little benchmark, but it's not really the only one for artificial intelligence. So although it was interesting in terms of computational linguistics, we needed new markers. And I think we're at the stage now where we need new markers again, in as much as it's very difficult these days to tell the difference between sophisticated reaction and something that's actually, for want of a better word, cogitating.
So there are games where, of course, you have an assistant or some kind of teammate who is AI driven, and then sometimes it makes most silliest of mistakes, and you go, oh, you should be following me, guys. It's like it's a block on the floor. Walk around it.
Yes, escort missions.
Yeah.
Yeah, several of them. It is still just reactive software, but on a scale unimaginably more sophisticated than seen even 10 years ago. So we're getting to the stage now where in some senses we're refining, but in some senses we've still got the same questions. Where's the consciousness? How do we make it? We're very good at mimicry.
I was going to say we're very good at mimicking it, but
Yes.
it's not quite it.
In the same way, you can teach, say, a parrot to recite equations, but that parrot's not going to be publishing anytime soon,
No.
So I think that's the thing there. We're in danger of getting a wee bit distracted and ending up as, the equation spouting parrot. Having said that, though, the questions we've got are the same questions we've always got. How is it we're conscious? To what extent are other species conscious? How come we've made the leap and no one else has? Or have others and, we've
We don't
just not
recognise.
realised? Yes.
Well, we certainly hope we've whet your appetite. That, in fact, was part 1. We're going to be continuing this discussion, conversation with Ni Clayton on the next episode of Rabbit Hole, that is Reality. The conversation I had with her lasted something like an hour, so it makes sense that you can hear the whole conversation and where we go in regards to morality, ethics, and future applications of artificial intelligence, as well as discussing technocracy, transhumanism, and bridging the gaps from humans to cyborgs, human downloading intelligence, and so forth. So we hope you tune in next time on the Rabbit Hole that is Reality. That'll be episode 14 and will be available 2 weeks from today. Now, being an investigator of the strange, weird, the wonderful, and then the curious, I find the theories and the stories of the Phantom Hitchhiker phenomenon psychologically interesting. Is that, and I'll tell you a couple that, Nottingham basically is famous for having quite a few of them, in fact. But it appears to be it's a vanishing fad. And fad that is probably the wrong word, really. It's certainly nowhere near as distinctive as it once was. When I was growing up, I could remember reading lots of books. There was always lots of stories of hitchhikers outside the road who would put the thumb out, you'd get in the car, and they'd disappear. Other stories of Phantom Hitchhikers are, it's a girl in the middle of the road, or it's a girl at the side of the road or whatever, and you open the door, they get in, and you drive about X amount of miles down the road, and all of a sudden they disappear. Or you notice that they've disappeared, they're not there anymore. And if you just stop and sit there in bewilderment about where this person's gone. There's stories around like scarves and jumpers been found draped over gravestones, or you've been given an address or a message by the person, and you've gone to the house, and they may have died X amount of years beforehand, and then you've discovered that you actually picked up a phantom hitchhiker. So really, the story and the core elements are always very similar and very much the same. And over the course of this, we'll talk about them. So I picked up a book quite recently by Jan Brunvan, and it's a book from like 1981, the year I was born basically. Again, it was talking about the phenomenon known as Phantom Hitchhikers. And I was looking through there, and it was typically it's a collection, dozens and dozens and dozens of different versions of the tale. Now, I think it has a psychological basis, and that is in Nottingham. There is a scary little place, and it is scary because there's no lights there. It's called George's Lane. If you check it out on Google or whatever, you can read about it. George's Lane links Nottingham with a former mining town called Calverton. Calverton is a notorious place. Basically, it's where it used to have the gallows. There's stories there of spectral dogs, haunted pubs, all the usual stuff. But this particular road, it has a couple of curves in it, and on that road, it's considered to be the most famous example of a phantom rider on the side of the road. Now, in this, what happens is, imagine the scene, right? You're in your car, you're driving on the way home, you see a figure in the road, you look at it, you thought you might have run it over, and then you go to look back out your rearview mirror, and only to find that shadowed figure is now sitting in the back of your car. It's very common. In fact, people even today flatly refused to drive on this road because of that. Now, PIEM, which is the Paranormal Investigations East Midlands team, who I do quite a bit of work with, they've done a number of tests along there, and they also put it down to, a visual matrixing, a trick of the light, in regards to the environment that's around there. And it's understandable. There's lots of blurry lights. There's lots of lights beyond the trees. You can't see much. It's dark. It's overgrown. So your eyes are already playing tricks. But the stories across Phantom Hitchhikers invariably happen when you're driving on a long road. It's dark and it's night. It's the ideal setting, really, for a ghost story. The dark roads at night are tiredness. Now, unintentional amnesia, as it's called, which is a close relative of unintentional blindness. Now, this is famously demonstrated in the. In fact, it's the story. What's it called? It's a basketball game, and it's a famous scientific experiment. In fact, it's a basketball game, and all the people who've watched the game are asked a number of questions about it, but not one saw the gorilla. Not one saw the gorilla in a suit that ran through the game. Not one. So it's always cited as an example of how we have unintentional blindness. So, and I think this happens on these kind of streets. If you're a driver, or if you're doing your work shift or whatever, and you have a bit of a routine going, you'll think, I don't have no memory of the last few miles, or I don't know where my shift's gone. I don't know what I've been doing. And your brain literally has just switched off for a temporary period of time, and you're not able to recall accurately what you did. Now, you might not be able to remember perhaps a couple of miles back that you went through a red light or a green light. Just you generally just didn't notice. You didn't pay attention. You didn't take in that kind of data. In fact, there's a study. I got it myself written somewhere. I think it's by a guy called Jeremy Raff or Jeremy Wolf, and he was from the Harvard Medical School. And it's published around 2000, 2001. He is writing about things that aren't seen or that are immediately forgotten. So you see them and you instantly forget them. It's called instant amnesia, or a non-technical term could call this highway hypnosis. Describes where you have a mental twilight state caused by sensory deprivation. And this is you're driving on a road at night, and it encompasses unintentional amnesia, unintentional blindness. The effects are aggravated by the fact that you see road signs that disappear from view, you don't take in all this detail. Amnesia might provide an explanation for the vanishing hitchhiker. Now imagine you did let someone in, and you drop them off, say, a couple of miles down the road, but you have no recollection of the drop-off. So naturally, you start to think where they disappeared. Is that part of it, perhaps? I mean, Richard Wiseman, who is the professor of psychology at the University of Hertfordshire, and he's a legendary investigator of apparently paranormal phenomena. And he cites there as conspicuously very few compared to other types of ghost sighting. So does that put a sink in the theory? It's actually very hard to nail down any witnesses who've had apparently Phantom Hitchhiker stories. And it's true. You read them, but there's never really any note of who they really are. And I've never spoken to anyone who's actually had an encounter. It's always a I know a friend of a friend experience. I know a friend who's had this kind of experience, but no one ever really has. It'd be interesting, if anyone's listened to this who has had, a Phantom Hitchhiker experience. In fact, in Nottingham as well, there's the famous story of Elizabeth Shepherd, Bessie Shepherd, as the Stone quotes. And basically, it's a young girl. She was 17 back in the 1800s, and she was killed on the side of the roadway, heading down to Hucknall, and she was killed, and her belongings basically were sold on by a guy. Guy was caught at the pub trying to sell the stuff on. He was killed and hanged. And apparently, the ghost of this girl, Bessie Shepherd, appears as an anniversary kind of ghost, and also as a Phantom Hitchhiker on the A60 going north out of Nottingham. Loads of people apparently have seen it, but no one has actually seen it. If you know what I mean? No one. No one that I know of, or there's been loads of people who've seem to know other people, but don't know anyone particularly. So I think there's an explanation here as opposed to an unexplained happening here. Again, there's stories that existed in the past that they got in the car. I find that interesting because that would mean the ghost physically had mass. Opened the door, it sat down, the car went into the car, and then obviously light came back off the person when you're looking at them. There was if you were to drive up to someone, you would get light come back off that person. So for a period of time, they were indeed made, of matter. And of course, if they vanish, that's certainly something to be talking about. But that never seems to be the questions being asked. It's a case of, well, where did you go? So Phantom Hitchhikers, interesting phenomena. I think it's more closely related to a dream or a hallucination, or a hypnagogic state where you have this kind of unintentional amnesia triggered, or unintentional blindness, where you may have forgot that you picked someone up, or it's a visual matrix thing, trick of the mind illusion. So as for our fortean stories, I love fortean stories because there's just so much quirky stuff out there in the world. Check out this guy. He was a rodeo clown. He survived being struck by lightning twice at the same event. His name was Casey Wagner. He was taking part in a Rednecks for Paychecks off-road driving event. Yeah, I'm sure it was like that. I'm sure he's just driving around in a tractor or some shit. He basically sheltered under a tree. He was hit by lightning. It says it came up through his right leg, and as he dropped to his knees, he got hit again. Who says lightning doesn't strike the same place twice? It clearly struck this guy twice. He basically dropped to his knees and was struck again, it says here. He was treated by a nurse who was watching the race and at a hospital. It's because basically he was wearing static, he was carrying static, he had a plastic poncho on, and he says there was only one thing that kept him alive, and that was God. And I owe him everything. I can tell you one thing, I'm going to start going to church more. Well, yeah, getting hit by lightning twice, in a matter of minutes, that's pretty out there. Officials in Abu Dhabi have called for stronger laws against sorcery because the current legislation is far too lenient. Salim Al-Mari is one of the ones fighting to amend a 1983 law that wants the authorities to get tougher on sorcerers. And he told the National Enquirer this past week. He says some people actually believed in sorcerers that could carry out such boasts such as making it rain or making more money, and he suggested the recommended 3-year sentence for anyone found guilty should be extended. Yeah, okay. Don't get me wrong, they're all shams, I completely get that. They're taking money, basically it's fraud. Saying you're a sorcerer though, that's a bit extreme. I mean, saying you're a sorcerer, that's right up there saying like you're a demigod or the other son of a god, or you've been given godly powers and you can make it rain and you can make fire come from your boomstick and so on. Do people really fall for this shit? I guess, when they're scared or when there's superstitions abound in the community, people do fall for this stuff. And they do it here as well, not just in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, I agree, there should be a prison sentence for these people. Now, I'm not sure which way around to put these next two stories, because they're both as funny as fuck. I'll do it this way. Okay, basically, a naked man claims that he's from a long family line of Sasquatches. A Sasquatch, this guy, claims that he's the son of Bigfoot. He attacked a hunter in Washington County, Oregon on Thursday. According to his daughter, as in the guy who was attacked, they were out in the woods, and she's like 20 years old. The guy who was attacked, Mr. McDonald, he was 58. They reported a naked man near his all-terrain vehicle on Thursday morning. Sergeant Bob Ray, the sheriff's office spokesman, says the naked man attacked, hitting the hunter repeatedly in the head with an apple-sized rock, causing broken fingers, a dislocated shoulder, and an eye injury. Before McDonald finally managed to fight off his attacker. McDonald then held him at bay with his hunting rifle and was able to call for help. So, yeah, McDonald's he's going to recover from his injuries, but the guy who attacked him claims that he is the descendant of the Sasquatch. You can't make this shit up. You really can't. So yeah, we're going to end this one on a bizarrely sexual story. Now, it's sexual only because it's Sweden. Right, Sweden now allows public masturbation. Now, a 65-year-old Swedish man, was acquitted of sexual assault after pleasuring himself on a beach in Stockholm in June. This is how he just got to court, of course. The District Court of Södertörn tossed out the charge on the grounds that he wasn't looking at anybody particular at the time he was fondling himself, and the court has ruled he committed no offence as he did not direct his activity at any particular target. So as long as it's not pointing at somebody, you can masturbate in public in Sweden. This has been The Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, episode 13. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us here today. My name is Kristian Lander, and I will see you next time. As it is the 5th of November, roundabout when this goes out, what better poem, what better music than playing out, not really music I guess, but the passage. The 5th of November. Remember, remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know no reason why the gunpowder treason should never be forgot. Guy Fawkes' companions did a scheme contrive to blow up King and Parliament, all up alive. 70 barrels laid below to prove old England's overthrow, but by God's providence him they catch, with a dark lantern lighting a match. A stick and a stake for King James' stake. You won't give me one, I'll take two, the better for me, the worse for you. A rope to hang the Pope, a pennyworth of cheese to choke him, a pint of beer to wash it down, a jolly good fire to burn him. Hurrah, boys, make the bells ring. Hurrah, boys, God save the King. Hip, hip, hurrah!